An individual laughed directly at a child's face, firmly stating that no black woman would ever be able to serve in special forces. The young girl stood motionless, her eyes filled with tears, until the entrance doors opened and her mother appeared, dressed in her military attire. Amaya Richardson was not attempting to impress anyone. She was a 12-year-old, standing in the shoe section of a Dick's Sporting Goods store inside South Park Mall in Charlotte, conversing with her closest friend about school, athletic shoes, and her strong desire for a new pair of Nikes. Her tone was relaxed, but then, as children often do, she said something that caused others to stare. "My mother won't be picking me up until she finishes her work at Fort Bragg," Amaya explained, snapping a shoebox lid shut. "She's in special forces, so her schedule is sometimes chaotic." Her friend blinked. "What? Hold on, your mom is in the army? Like, actually involved in combat?" "Yes," Amaya responded with the same nonchalance she used to discuss her preferred breakfast cereal. "She is Sergeant Major Nicole Richardson. She just returned from an overseas deployment." It should have been merely another small boast children typically make, but that was when the sound of laughter pierced the atmosphere. It was not the gentle laughter of someone amused. It was sharp, dismissive, the kind intended to diminish you. Standing a few feet away, sifting through a rack of Under Armour hoodies, was Officer Colton Reeves. Off-duty, dressed in jeans and a Carolina Panthers t-shirt, his badge clipped to his belt like an accessory, he appeared more like a weekend shopper than a police officer. But the laughter was his, and it was loud enough for other customers to notice. "Special Forces," Reeves remarked, shaking his head with a smirk. "Come on, I've been in law enforcement for 20 years, and I can assure you right now, there's no way your mother is operating with the Green Berets. Especially not." He paused, his gaze narrowing. "Especially not someone like her." The word stung, and the tone stung more intensely. Amaya's face flushed, her lips pressing into a thin line. Around her, people had turned to look. A mother with a toddler in her shopping cart lingered nearby, feigning to arrange socks, but clearly listening intently. A pair of teenagers whispered behind their hands. Amaya's friend leaned closer, her voice low. "Just disregard him. He doesn't understand." But ignoring was not an option. The officer had not finished speaking. Reeves chuckled once more and added, "Listen, I get it. Kids enjoy fabricating stories. My son used to claim his father was Spider-Man. It's the same sort of thing. Cute, but not factual." The warmth of embarrassment crept up Amaya's neck. She desired to say something to defend her mother, but every word became trapped in her throat. Her hands trembled as she forcefully pushed the shoebox back onto the shelf, the cardboard grating loudly against the display. "Why would you utter that in front of everyone?" her friend whispered nervously. Amaya swallowed hard. "Because it is true." That defiance, quiet but unwavering, elicited more laughter from Reeves. He tilted his head, addressing the small group of strangers now pretending to browse. "See, that is precisely what I am referring to. A charming child inventing a fantasy. Look, darling, there is nothing wrong with wishing your mother were a hero, but you do not need to create fairy tales." Fairy tales. The word landed like a forceful blow. Amaya's mother was not a fairy tale. She was real, stronger than anyone Amaya knew. A woman who had tucked her into bed one week and flown halfway across the world the next. But standing there under the fluorescent lights of a sporting goods store, Amaya could not substantiate it. And Reeves was aware of that. His smug grin indicated he felt he had triumphed. "Tell you what," he said, tapping his badge. "If your mom is genuinely special forces, perhaps she should visit the station sometime. We could use a good laugh." Amaya's chest constricted. She recalled her mother's calloused hands, the rows of medals displayed in their living room, the way she navigated airports with a presence that caused strangers to step aside. Her mother had risked her life more times than she could count. And here was a man dismantling it all with a sneer in front of an audience. Her voice cracked when she finally managed to speak. "You possess no knowledge about her." That sentence hung in the air. Reeves's smile wavered for just a moment, but he quickly recovered, clapping his hands together as if the matter were resolved. "Certainly, Kit. Whatever you say." Around them, shoppers exchanged glances, some amused, some uncomfortable, but no one intervened, and no one affirmed that she was speaking the truth. The silence only amplified Amaya's humiliation. Her friend shifted uncomfortably. "Amaya, perhaps we should just wait outside." But Amaya could not move. Her athletic shoes felt fused to the linoleum floor. This was not solely about being embarrassed. It was about her mother, her truth, her pride. And witnessing it ridiculed in front of strangers made her chest burn. Still, she lowered her eyes to the floor tiles because what could she truly do? She was merely a child. But what Amaya did not know was that the very moment she wished for her mother to appear, Nicole Richardson was already on her way, walking through the sliding glass doors of the mall in full uniform. The sporting goods store seemed smaller now. Every corner felt saturated with eyes, all of them focused on Amaya. She shifted her weight, hugging her arms around herself, but nothing alleviated the feeling. The officer's voice carried so effortlessly, reverberating off shelves stacked with backpacks and racks of sports jerseys. Officer Reeves leaned against the display as if he had unlimited time, as though this were entertainment. "You know," he said with that half-smile that resembled a sneer, "people do not comprehend the type of training required to get into special forces. Years of grueling effort, combat deployments, the absolute best of the best. It is not exactly the kind of profession you hear about at PTA meetings." He chuckled again, shaking his head. "And you expect me to believe your mom is one of them?" The words twisted into Amaya's chest like a knot. She wished she could explain, wished she could discuss the times her mother had been absent for months. The letters she wrote in pencil because phones were not always secure to use, but she could not. Not with him staring her down. Not with strangers circling as if they were anticipating a performance. Her friend Kane Torres nervously glanced at the other shoppers. "We should just leave," she whispered again, but Amaya shook her head. Her throat tightened, but she forced the words out. "I do not care if you believe me. My mom doesn't require your approval." That response should have concluded the matter, but Reeves was not the kind of man who would allow a child to have the final word. He took a step closer, lowering his voice just enough to make it feel personal, but still loud enough for others to hear. "Listen, sweetheart, I understand you desire to feel proud, but fabricating stories is not the way. People are going to laugh, and honestly, a little girl like you does not understand what true sacrifice entails." Amaya's ears burned. The tears she refused to shed blurred the shelves in front of her. Kane placed a hand on her sleeve, but Amaya pulled away, her fists clenched at her sides. From across the aisle, a man in a baseball cap muttered under his breath, "Just let the kid speak, man." His voice was not loud enough to be widely heard, and Reeves ignored it. Amaya swallowed and spoke up again, her words trembling, but stable enough to be heard. "You are mistaken about her. You are mistaken about everything." That earned another laugh from Reeves. But this one was not merely amusement. It was the laugh of someone convinced they had already won. He looked around the store, almost inviting others to partake in the joke. "Wrong, kid. I have worked alongside genuine heroes. I have met soldiers. I have met the individuals who actually deploy overseas, engage in dangerous activities, and trust me, they do not resemble your mother." The last sentence landed with more impact than anything else he had uttered. Amaya froze, her face hot with shame and rage. She understood precisely what he implied, and so did everyone listening. Kane gasped. "That is not fair," she blurted. "You do not even know her." Reeves directed his gaze at her, his grin widening. "And you do," he said. "What? Did you two sit around exchanging war stories? Please. I have been in uniform longer than you two have been alive. I believe I understand what is real and what is invented." Kane recoiled, but Amaya held her ground, though her hands trembled. "You will see. She is coming." The officer smirked. "Certainly she is. Perhaps she will parachute directly through the skylight, huh?" He chuckled, shaking his head as if the jest was too amusing to resist. "Do not worry, kid. You will learn. The world is tough. It is better to confront the truth now than to continue living in make-believe." Shoppers whispered, some shaking their heads, others quietly pulling out their phones, recording the scene. Amaya noticed a woman pretending to flip through yoga pants, her phone angled subtly toward them. A teenage boy near the checkout nudged his friend, pointing. The humiliation weighed on her like a heavy backpack. For the first time, Amaya wished she had said nothing at all. Perhaps she should have remained silent, kept her mother's life private, as Nicole frequently requested her to. But the thought of Reeves smirking, of everyone believing his version instead of hers, made her chest burn. She quickly wiped her eyes with the back of her hand and stood taller. "You will see," she repeated, firmer this time. The officer leaned back against the rack of hoodies, folding his arms as if he had successfully concluded a case. "We will see, huh?" he said with a smirk. "All right then. I will wait." The silence following his words was louder than the music playing over the store's speakers. Every second stretched, the crowd restless, yet curious. Some waited to see if Amaya would break, if she would shrink away in shame. She did not. But while Amaya stood there, struggling not to cry, her mother was already walking past the food court, her boots striking the tile floor with every step, about to turn the corner and alter everything. Amaya's heart pounded so loudly she was certain everyone could hear it. She remained rooted in front of the shelves of sneakers, but her inner self was screaming for her to flee. She wished to vanish, wished to rewind the moment she had opened her mouth. If she had simply said, "My mom's busy," none of this would have transpired. Now, strangers stared at her as if she were the star of a show she had never consented to be in. Officer Colton Reeves stood as if he were enjoying a leisurely afternoon comedy. He rocked back on his heels, arms crossed, his smirk fixed in place. "You are remarkably quiet now," he said, beginning to realize you might have exaggerated the truth somewhat. The words inflicted pain. Amaya kept her eyes down, but his voice repeatedly compelled her to look up. She could almost discern the whispers circulating. "Why is he confronting her like that?" Someone muttered from a few aisles over. "Perhaps the child truly did invent it," another voice responded. "Low, but not low enough." Kane tugged at her sleeve again. "Amaya, please. Let us just wait for your mom outside. You do not have to continue speaking to him." But Amaya's chest burned. She was unsure if it was anger or shame or both. "I am not fabricating," she whispered mostly to herself. Reeves leaned closer, his voice a notch lower. "Now look, I am attempting to spare you from yourself. If you go around narrating stories like this, people are going to laugh. Not everyone will be kind about it. You are better off adhering to the truth. Your mother works diligently. She cares for you. That is sufficient. There is no need to pretend she is some kind of war hero." Her fingernails dug into her palms. Pretend. That word echoed in her mind. Pretend. As if the nights she cried into her pillow because she missed her mother were imaginary. As if the medals in the shadow box on their wall were mere souvenirs from a gift shop. For the first time, doubt crept in. Not because she questioned her mother, but because she questioned herself. Perhaps she should not have spoken so casually. Perhaps it was her fault. Strangers now perceived her mother's life as a jest. She bit the inside of her cheek so hard it stung. Kane whispered, "He does not matter. You know what is true." But it did not feel that way. Truth did not matter when no one believed you. Reeves shifted his weight, glancing around the store as if he had an audience to keep entertained. "Tell you what," he said, almost chuckling. "If your mom walks in here in uniform, I will purchase those sneakers for you myself." He gestured toward the wall of shoes. "But until then, perhaps keep the fairy tales at home." Fairy tales again. Her vision blurred, but she refused to blink. She would not grant him the satisfaction of seeing her cry. A woman nearby holding a basket of clearance shirts finally spoke. "She is just a child," she said firmly. Reeves turned his head slowly, making eye contact with the woman. "And I am merely telling her the truth. Better she hears it now than continues to embarrass herself." The woman frowned, but looked away, shaking her head. No one else uttered a word. Amaya's stomach twisted. Why did no one defend her? Why was it easier for everyone to stand and observe instead of affirming she was correct? Her mother always told her, "Courage is not loud, Amaya. Sometimes it is simply standing tall when you wish to shrink." But standing tall felt impossible when the floor itself seemed to pull her down. She pressed her lips together until they ached. You will see, she whispered again, her voice trembling. Reeves sighed as if bored now. Kid, I have heard it all. Aliens, superheroes, secret agents. Believe me, I have heard every story, and every time it is the same thing. Kids wanting to feel special. Nothing wrong with that. But the truth does not require defending. His words deeply affected her. Because was that not precisely what she was doing? Defending. If the truth was so obvious, why did she feel as though she were losing? Kane stepped between them, her small frame almost shaking. You are being cruel. She is not lying. Reeves arched a brow. And how do you know? Because I have seen pictures, Kane retorted. Her mom is in uniform. She has medals. She stopped, realizing the words sounded weak against his disbelief. Reeves chuckled under his breath. Pictures? Anyone can purchase a uniform at an army surplus store. That does not make it real. Amaya clenched her jaw. She loathed that he had an answer for everything. Loathed that every word he spoke made the crowd lean in a little closer, as if he were narrating the version that made sense. Her knees felt weak, but she forced herself to stand straighter. You will see, she repeated for the third time, the words emerging stronger this time. Reeves tilted his head, smiling like a man humoring a child. All right, I am waiting. The crowd was no longer whispering. They were simply watching. The air became thick with anticipation, every second drawing out like an hour for her. Amaya could barely breathe, her thoughts racing, her palms slick with perspiration. And then, faintly, she heard it. The sound of boots against tile, steady and resolute. But what Amaya did not yet realize was that her mom's arrival would not just put an end to the laughter. It would completely overturn the entire store. The sliding glass doors at the mall entrance hissed open, allowing in a burst of chatter and footsteps from the food court. Sergeant Major Nicole Richardson strode through with a presence that turned heads without her uttering a word. Her camouflage uniform was sharp, the patches on her sleeve catching the overhead light, her beret neatly tucked under one arm. She had just left a ceremony at Fort Bragg and had decided to surprise her daughter by picking her up herself. She had not anticipated walking into a crowd. From across the store, Amaya immediately caught sight of her. Relief surged through her chest so rapidly, it nearly stole her breath. Her heart leaped, but so did her fear, because now her mother was about to witness everything. Nicole's boots struck the polished tile in an unwavering rhythm. Her gaze scanned the racks of athletic wear, the line of shoppers, then stopped on the small cluster gathered near the sneaker aisle. Her daughter's face was flushed, her fists balled at her sides. Beside her, Kane looked both frightened and protective. And standing opposite them, Officer Reeves, leaning back as if he owned the space. Nicole's jaw tightened. She crossed the aisle, her uniform attracting eyes as shoppers instinctively stepped aside. Amaya's throat went dry. She longed to rush into her mom's arms, but something about the way Nicole moved, focused, purposeful, made her remain frozen. Reeves spotted her too. Initially, his grin did not fade. He assumed she was just another parent arriving to pick up her child. But as Nicole drew closer, her rank insignia was impossible to overlook. His smirk faltered for half a second before he composed himself. Mom. Amaya's voice cracked louder than she intended. But the relief in it silenced even the shoppers who had been whispering. Nicole stopped beside her daughter, her hand resting lightly on Amaya's shoulder. The tension in Amaya's body melted slightly under the touch. What is occurring? Nicole asked, her voice calm but caring. Reeves straightened, shifting his weight, then forced a polite smile. Evening, ma'am. Just clarifying a misunderstanding. Nicole's eyes flicked from Reeves to the circle of strangers, then back to her daughter. Amaya's lips trembled. He said you could not be who you are, that I invented it. The words tumbled out, half shame, half desperation. Nicole did not respond immediately. She simply scrutinized Reeves, the silence lingering just long enough for him to feel it. Reeves let out a chuckle that sounded more nervous this time. Kids, you know how they are. Big imaginations. I was just having a little fun with her. Nicole's voice remained even, but it cut cleanly. You ridiculed my daughter in front of strangers and called her a liar. The man's shoulders stiffened. Now hold on. I did not call her that. I just said she repeated the truth, Nicole interrupted. And you decided it was a joke. Tell me, officer, what exactly made it so amusing? The title, officer, was delivered with deliberate emphasis. Reeves's face tightened. A couple of the shoppers exchanged glances, surprised she knew. The badge on his belt glinted under the lights. He cleared his throat. Look, Sergeant Major, with all due respect. Nicole raised her hand slightly. Respect does not begin with laughter at a child. The store had fallen silent. Even the music overhead seemed quieter, as if the air itself paused to listen. Amaya stood taller now, the burden of humiliation lifting as her mother's presence filled the space. Kane's eyes widened, almost in awe. Reeves shifted again, his confidence gradually eroding. I did not intend anything by it, just thought it was unusual. That is all. Nicole tilted her head. Unusual does not mean impossible. It means you have never witnessed it. And perhaps the issue is less about me being here and more about you never imagining I could be. Her voice was not raised, but the words struck harder than any shout. Amaya looked up at her mother, pride swelling within her chest. She wanted Reeves to speak now. She wanted him to try, but he did not. His mouth opened slightly, then shut again, his smirk finally gone. The woman with the clearance basket whispered to the person beside her, "She is the real deal." The teenage boy at the checkout muttered, "No way. That is legitimate." And Amaya, for the first time that afternoon, breathed without feeling as though the whole world was against her. Nicole squeezed her daughter's shoulder lightly before turning back to Reeves. Next time, before you laugh at a child, remember that truth does not require your permission to exist. Reeves's throat bobbed. He gave a stiff nod, his earlier bravado scattered like dust. But what Reeves did not realize was that the confrontation had only just begun. Nicole was not finished making her point. The air in the store felt heavy now. No one spoke. No one shuffled racks or pretended to browse. Every shopper within earshot had turned toward the sneaker aisle, their eyes darting between the officer's stiff posture and the uniformed woman standing firm beside her daughter. Nicole did not raise her voice. She did not have to. Authority emanated from her posture, in the steady way she looked into Reeves's eyes. "Officer Reeves," she said evenly, glancing at his badge. "I do not know you. You do not know me. Yet you deemed it appropriate to laugh at my daughter, to dismiss her in front of strangers. Why?" Reeves licked his lips. The confidence he had worn so easily minutes ago was faltering. "Look, Sergeant Major, I was not trying to answer the question." Her tone sharpened, but only slightly. Why mock a child who spoke the truth? He shifted his weight, attempting to regain some control. "It was not like that. I just thought she was exaggerating. Kids do that." Nicole studied him, her gaze unwavering. Exaggerating is claiming your mom bakes the best cookies in the world. Exaggerating is telling your friends you can run faster than a car. My daughter did not exaggerate. She told you who I am. And instead of listening, you laughed. A ripple of murmurs moved through the crowd. The woman with the clearance basket set it down, her arms now crossed, clearly invested. Reeves forced out a laugh, but it sounded thin. "All right, perhaps I should not have laughed. But you have to comprehend, it caught me off guard. I mean, Special Forces." Nicole interrupted again. "What about Special Forces caught you off guard? That my daughter knows the term or that she used it to describe me?" He hesitated. That pause was more telling than anything else. Nicole leaned forward slightly, her voice dropping just enough to compel him to move closer if he wished to hear. "You assumed because I am a woman, because I am black, you could not imagine someone like me holding that title, so you mocked my daughter to protect your own assumptions." Reeves swallowed hard. His eyes darted to the onlookers, realizing he was not just answering her, he was answering everyone. Kane stepped closer to Amaya, whispering, "He looks anxious." Amaya whispered back, "Good?" Reeves drew in a slow breath, trying to find stable ground. "I never said anything about race. I never said anything about women." You are attributing words to me that I did not say. Nicole straightened, her expression calm. You did not have to utter it. Your laughter said it for you. A few people in the crowd nodded faintly. A man near the registers muttered, "She is right." Reeves's jaw flexed, his smirk now completely vanished. Fine, perhaps I conveyed the wrong impression. I will admit that, but I did not intend harm. Nicole glanced down at Amaya, then back at him. Intent does not erase impact. She stood here while a grown man with a badge transformed her truth into entertainment. Do you have any idea how small that can make a child feel? Amaya felt her chest constrict, but this time it was not from humiliation. It was from pride. Her mom was articulating everything she could not. The silence stretched again. The officer shifted his weight, clearly aware of every phone camera angled his way now. Nicole let the pause linger before continuing. I have served my country for 22 years. I have led soldiers through terrain you will never witness. Made decisions that involved life and death. I wear this uniform because I earned it. Every stripe, every insignia. And yet, the most difficult battle I fight is here, convincing people like you that my existence is not a jest. The words struck like steel wrapped in velvet. Reeves's face flushed. He opened his mouth, then shut it again, his arguments depleted. Nicole turned slightly, addressing not just him, but the entire store. This is not solely about me. It is about what happens when someone decides their assumptions matter more than the truth. My daughter should not have to defend my career to strangers. She should not have to stand here in tears because a man could not imagine her words being real. A quiet clap broke the silence. The woman with the clearance basket initiated it, then stopped, embarrassed. But the gesture had already made its impression. Reeves rubbed the back of his neck, his bravado long gone. All right, point taken. Nicole studied him one last time, then spoke quietly enough that only he and Amaya could clearly hear. Next time, remember that respect costs you nothing, but its absence costs others everything. Amaya looked up at her mother, her chest swelling with a pride that expelled the shame she had carried. For the first time since Reeves had laughed, she felt steady again. But even as Reeves attempted to withdraw, the eyes of the crowd were not finished with him. They desired more than an uneasy apology. And Nicole was not done imparting the lesson. Officer Reeves shifted uncomfortably, his arms crossing over his chest as if he wished to fold in on himself. The crowd was not dispersing. If anything, it was growing. People from other aisles drifted closer, drawn by the tension, by the sight of a decorated soldier standing toe-to-toe with a police officer who had initiated something he could no longer control. Nicole did not move. She held her ground, one hand resting on Amaya's shoulder, her presence as stable as a stone. The contrast was stark. Reeves fidgeting, Nicole calm, composed, unyielding. You believe this is over, she said softly. But it is not. Not until you understand what you did here. Reeves forced out a weak laugh, hoping to mask his discomfort. Look, Sergeant Major, I said I was wrong. What else do you want from me? An apology? I am sorry if I embarrassed your kid. Is that sufficient? The apology was hollow, offered like loose change. A few people in the crowd murmured disapproval. Nicole's eyes never wavered. No, because that was not an apology. That was you trying to preserve your reputation. Reeves's jaw worked, but nothing emerged. Nicole continued, her tone still calm but sharper now. An apology is not about you. It is about the person you harmed. My daughter stood here while you laughed at her. She believed in me so profoundly that she proudly spoke the truth, and you crushed it under your heel. If you wish to apologize, you look at her, not at me. The weight of the moment pressed down on Reeves. He glanced at Amaya, who stared back at him, her lips pressed tightly, eyes moist, but unwavering. The officer shifted again, clearly uncomfortable with the silence that demanded more from him. Finally, he muttered, "Sorry, kid." Nicole arched a brow. Try again. This time, the murmur of agreement from the crowd was louder. Reeves's face flushed crimson. His shoulders sagged under the gaze of strangers who expected him to rise to the occasion. He cleared his throat and spoke louder. Amaya, I am sorry. I should not have laughed at you. I should not have uttered what I said. You spoke the truth and I did not believe you. That was incorrect. Amaya's chest swelled. For once, she did not feel like shrinking. She held his gaze for a second longer, then looked up at her mom. Nicole gave the slightest nod, a gesture of reassurance. Reeves exhaled as if hoping that would conclude matters, but Nicole was not finished. She turned back to the crowd, her voice carrying clearly. This is not about one man and one child. This is about how effortless it is to dismiss someone when their narrative does not align with what you anticipate. My daughter's truth was straightforward, but instead of listening, it was simpler to assume she was fabricating. How many times does that occur? How many times do children grow up believing their voices do not matter because someone in a position of power chose to laugh instead of listen? The words landed like stones on water, rippling through the group of shoppers. Heads nodded. Some looked uncomfortable, not because Nicole was wrong, but because they recognized how often they had witnessed something similar and remained silent. Kane squeezed Amaya's hand, whispering, "She is incredible." Nicole looked down at her daughter. "Amaya, you never have to be embarrassed about telling the truth. Not when it is about me. Not about anything. If someone cannot handle it, that is their weakness, not yours." Tears threatened at the corners of Amaya's eyes, but this time they were not from humiliation. They were from relief, from vindication, from pride. Reeves rubbed the back of his neck, clearly wishing the ground would swallow him. He muttered, "I already expressed my apologies." Nicole looked at him one last time. "Then live by it. Next time you encounter a child with pride in their voice, do not strip it away. Allow them to retain it because once you take that from a child, it is not so easily returned." The silence that followed was dense. Then, almost unexpectedly, a young man near the checkout counter clapped once. Another joined. Within seconds, scattered applause filled the store. Not loud, not rowdy, but steady and supportive. Reeves's face burned crimson. He gave a curt nod and stepped back, retreating toward the exit, no longer the focal point, but the man who had been educated in front of strangers. Amaya turned to her mom, her voice small but steady. "Thank you." Nicole bent down slightly so her face was level with her daughter's. "No, Amaya. Thank you for speaking the truth when it was not easy. That is braver than anything I have ever accomplished in uniform." The words sank deep, settling in Amaya's heart like armor. For the first time that day, she believed it. But as the crowd slowly dispersed, Amaya realized something else. The lesson was not solely for Reeves. It was for everyone observing, including her. The store began to quiet again, though the air still buzzed with what had just transpired. A few shoppers lingered, pretending to look at shelves, but covertly glancing at Nicole and her daughter. Some whispered to each other, their tones hushed, but respectful now. The tension that had filled the space was gone, replaced with something heavier, something thoughtful. Amaya stood taller beside her mother, still holding Kane's hand. For the first time since Reeves had laughed, she did not feel diminutive. She felt acknowledged. The shame that had burned her cheeks only minutes earlier had dissolved into pride. Nicole glanced down at her. "Are you all right?" Amaya nodded. "Yeah, I hate that it happened." Nicole's hand rested on her daughter's shoulder. "I know, but sometimes moments like this teach us more than 100 quiet days ever could. You do not forget them, and neither does anyone who observed." Kane looked up at Nicole, her eyes wide. "You were amazing. Everyone was listening to you." Nicole gave a small smile. "I was not just addressing him. I was speaking to all of you. Never let anyone tell you your truth does not matter." A man in a baseball cap, the same one who had muttered earlier, finally spoke up louder. "Ma'am, thank you. I have a daughter myself. She is 9. I hope she grows up with that kind of courage." Nicole nodded once, the simple gesture carrying weight. Courage is not about not being scared. It is about speaking anyway. Amaya's chest swelled. Hearing those words uttered in front of strangers made her feel as though her mother's pride in her was carved into the air. As the shoppers began to drift away, a woman paused near Nicole. She lowered her voice but spoke clearly enough for Amaya to hear. Thank you for your service and thank you for demonstrating to him he was incorrect. Nicole's gaze softened. We all serve in our own ways. Today my daughter served by standing tall. That is something worth respecting. The woman smiled and walked off, leaving Nicole and Amaya standing by the sneakers that suddenly did not seem so important anymore. Amaya turned to her mom. Did I worsen it by saying it? Nicole shook her head. You made it better. You did not conceal who I am. You spoke the truth even when people laughed. That requires more strength than some adults ever acquire. For a moment, Amaya felt the burden of what had happened lift off her. She could breathe again. Kane gave her a quick squeeze. I told you he was wrong. Amaya laughed softly, wiping her eyes. Yeah, you did. They walked toward the exit together, Nicole's boots steady against the tile. People still glanced at them, but not with ridicule now, with something closer to admiration. As they stepped out into the wider mall, Amaya's mind replayed the scene. The laughter, the whispers, the sting of doubt, and then her mom's voice, clear and strong, cutting through all of it. She realized that even though it had been one of the most challenging moments of her young life, it had also been one of the most significant. Nicole slowed her stride and bent slightly toward her daughter. Amaya, remember this. People will doubt you. They will laugh, dismiss you, try to make you feel smaller, but you never let them take your truth. Not for me, not for anyone. Promise me that. Amaya looked up at her mom, eyes shining. I promise. Nicole kissed the top of her daughter's head, the simple gesture stronger than any speech. By the time they reached the car, Amaya felt lighter. She still carried the memory of Reeves' smirk, but it no longer weighed her down. Instead, it reminded her of something else, how quickly a person's assumptions can crumble when confronted with the truth. And as the car door shut and the mall disappeared behind them, Amaya leaned back against the seat, her hands still gripping Kane's, and thought, I will never be embarrassed about Mom again. Because that day, in a crowded store under bright fluorescent lights, she had learned a lesson that would stay with her forever. Never allow anyone to laugh you out of your own truth. And perhaps, just perhaps, the people who had witnessed it learned something too. That respect costs nothing, but withholding it can deeply scar someone. Nicole started the car, glanced in the rearview mirror, and said softly, Are you girls ready to head home? Amaya smiled for the first time since the ordeal began. Yeah, let us go home. The mall faded into the distance, but the lesson endured, and for everyone who heard it, whether they admitted it aloud or not, it would linger long after the sound of Nicole's boots had faded from the tile floor. Life has a way of placing us in unexpected moments. Moments that test whether we will remain silent or speak up, whether we will shrink or stand tall. If this story resonated with you, let it serve as a reminder. Always defend the truth, no matter who attempts to silence it. And if you wish to hear more stories like this, make sure to subscribe. You will not want to miss what comes next.